1. Boogeyman. The Boogeyman wasn't just bizarre, he was a nightmare for many fans. Debuting in 2005, this guy smashed clocks on his head, crawled to the ring, and delivered promos like he was possessed by Satan himself. But the craziest part is that he used to eat worms, live worms. He'd pull them from his mouth and even feed them to other wrestlers. The most infamous moment occurred when he licked a disgusting mole on Jillian Hall's face, then ate it. Boogeyman didn't reach the heights to be called a legend, but he didn't need to be one. His whole existence was just to shock fans, and he did a great job at that. 2. The Fake Undertaker. The Fake Undertaker was one of WWE's creepiest mind games ever. Back in 1994, WWE introduced Brian Lee as a twisted copy of the original Undertaker, dressed exactly like the dead man. Black trench coat, hat, makeup, and the whole spooky package. But something felt off, and the fans immediately realized this wasn't the character they loved. This version of the Undertaker was more aggressive, almost as if he was possessed by a dark shadow. Actually, the whole point was to mess with the real Undertaker's head and the fans' trust. The fake Undertaker attacked with brutal moves and even snatched the iconic urn from the real one. The fans were left in complete shock when they watched two almost identical characters battle it out for supremacy. But after a defeat at 1994 SummerSlam, the fake imposter disappeared forever. 3. Karma. Karma was a whole different kind of scary. Towering at almost 6 feet and packing serious muscle, she was feared by not just the divas, but also the men. Karma's entrance alone was enough to send chills down spines. It featured her laughing maniacally with some eerie piano music. She never spoke a word. She simply stared down at her opponents and annihilated them. Karma didn't stick around WWE for long, but in that short time, she delivered some truly unforgettable moments. Her most jaw-dropping appearance came at the 2012 Royal Rumble, when she made history as one of the very few women to ever compete in the men's Royal Rumble match. The crowd went absolutely wild the moment her music hit, and Michael Cole, who was in the ring at the time, got so scared he bolted away. Karma wasted no time by hitting Dolph Ziggler with a brutal implant buster, and even eliminated Unico. Although she was eventually eliminated herself, she had already cemented her status as one of the most unforgettable surprise entrants in Rumble history. 4. Papa Shango. When Papa Shango showed up in the early 90s, he took WWE by storm. He was dressed as a voodoo priest and wore skulls around his neck to intimidate his opponents. Shango was also notorious for cursing his opponents, and the most infamous moment came during his feud with the Ultimate Warrior. Shango apparently cast a spell backstage, which caused Warrior to clutch his stomach and vomit uncontrollably in the ring. Then, just a few weeks later, during a promo, Warrior also had this black goo mysteriously ooze from his scalp. Shango would create more drama by suddenly appearing and disappearing with smoke effects, and chanting bizarre incantations to summon dark forces. Many fans were left confused, disturbed, or creeped out by the bizarre character, which is probably why the gimmick didn't last long. 5. Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt made one hell of an entrance in 2012 when the entire arena was plunged into darkness and cryptic videos were shown on the Titantron. With his Hawaiian shirts, rocking chair, and eerie speeches, he introduced himself as a backwoods cult leader who preached about saving people, but the way he did it felt more like a horror sermon than a wrestling promo. His eerie music, lantern-lit entrances, and the fireflies from the crowd made his arrival feel like a proper ritual. And when he spoke, he didn't just trash talk. He struck fear into his opponents through a series of cryptic speeches. Bray Wyatt was equally menacing in the ring, with his upside-down crawl being one of the most haunting maneuvers WWE has ever seen. Many fans were scared of him, while many adored his performance. But one thing's for certain, there'll never be a Bray Wyatt again. He tragically passed away in real life in 2023. 6. Mordecai. Mordecai might just be the most unique gimmick in WWE history. Draped in all-white robes with bleached hair and a glowing cross, he walked to the ring like a judgmental priest and talked about cleansing WWE of its sins. His entrance was equally chilling. Smoke, Latin chants, and a holy light that made it look like the end of the world is near. He'd strike down opponents like they were sinners facing divine punishment. Mordecai never even cracked a smile, showing just how menacing he was. But behind the scenes, the character never really took off. WWE didn't know where to slot him, and he disappeared as quickly as he debuted. Still, the few appearances he made were unforgettable. 7. Abdullah the Butcher. Abdullah the Butcher didn't need creepy music or spooky promos. He was a wrecking machine who was involved in some of the most violent and bloody hardcore matches WWE has ever seen. This guy showed up covered in scars, carried weapons to the ring, and manhandled his opponents until they were cut open. Abdullah was notorious for stabbing opponents with forks mid-match. Not fake ones, but actual cutlery. His forehead was permanently mangled from years of blading, and he'd bleed during almost every appearance. Abdullah barely did any trash talk, as he let his carnage in the ring speak. Even decades later, his matches are hard to watch, but his legacy as a monster lives on. 8. Kane. When Kane debuted in 1997, his entrance freaked out kids all over the world. The lights turned red. He ripped out the Hell in a Cell door and walked out as a monster. Kane was dressed in a full red and black bodysuit and a terrifying mask to hide his supposed burn scars. He was introduced as The Undertaker's long-lost brother, but Kane wasn't just some random big guy. He apparently had supernatural powers, could summon fire at will, and showed no emotion as he destroyed his opponents in the ring. Over the years, Kane has done it all. Set announcers on fire, electrocuted Shane McMahon's genitals, buried people alive, and even got involved in weddings and funerals in the most disturbing ways. His creepy eyeball and sudden bursts of aggression made him feel less like a wrestler and more like a horror movie villain. 9. Gangrel. When it comes to creepy appearances, Gangrel easily takes the cake here. With pale skin, disfigured fangs, and a blood-stained mouth, he looked like an actual barbarian caught from the wild. Gangrel didn't wrestle like a typical superstar either. His movements were animalistic and awkward, almost as if he was stalking his prey instead of fighting. The most disturbing part was when he drank a goblet of blood before every match, like it was some dark ritual. Gangrel also led a group known as the Brood, which included a young Edge and Christian. They humiliated their opponents with sudden bloodbaths, where the lights would go out and someone would end up soaked in blood. The group didn't cut any flashy promos, but their silence was enough to creep everyone out of their minds. Gangrel himself didn't last long in WWE, but he'll always be remembered as the crazy barbarian. 10. The Undertaker. The Undertaker is arguably one of WWE's biggest and well-known superstars, but during his late 90s Ministry of Darkness era, he was at his absolute creepiest. Dressed in hooded robes and surrounded by priests, The Undertaker introduced himself as a satanic cult leader. He delivered cryptic messages, performed dark rituals, and even attempted to sacrifice Stephanie McMahon in one of WWE's most controversial storylines. This Undertaker would initiate bizarre sermons where he'd promise pain, torment, and judgment upon anyone who opposed him. His matches also seemed supernatural with lightning bolts, fire, and crucifixes involved. Many fans thought this version of Undertaker wasn't just spooky, it was disturbing. While later versions of Taker were more grounded, the Ministry era stood out as the time when he truly embraced the darkness. 11. Luna Vachon. Luna Vachon didn't look or sound like any diva in wrestling. She had half her head shaved, blue veins painted across her face, and her voice sounded like she was an actual demon. Luna didn't give normal promos either. She acted completely unhinged by screaming and growling like a maniac. The ironic fact is that she was Gangrel's ex-wife, and they both acted as if they lost touch with reality. One of Luna's most creepy moments came during her feud with Sable in the late 90s. Luna would scream threats at her while gritting her teeth and drooling like a rabid animal. Despite her unforgettable impact, Luna didn't enjoy a long run in WWE. She never claimed a women's title, and her time in the company was cut short by backstage issues and creative mismanagement. She sadly passed away in 2010 from an accidental overdose. 12. Dink the Clown. Dink the Clown might sound like a goofy gimmick now, but when he first showed up in WWE in the early 90s, he was a straight-up nightmare. This wasn't a friendly clown waving to kids. Doink was twisted. He used to perform with a messy face paint and laughed maniacally as if he'd just escaped from a mental asylum. Doink's matches involved a lot of sinister pranks, where he'd hide under the ring and attack opponents with ruthless aggression. One time, Doink suddenly pulled out his own arm, only to reveal that it's a prosthetic. He then beat his opponent with it until the poor guy was knocked out cold. Doink would always smile while hurting people, and even laugh at the crowd's discomfort. As the years passed, his character was toned down and changed into more of a comedy act, but fans who remember that original run know how creepy Doink really was. 13. Mankind. Before Mick Foley became the hardcore legend everyone knows and loves, there was this Mankind character, which was pretty unsettling. His rogue leather mask and messy hair made you feel like he was going to cause absolute carnage. His promos were also creepy, where Mankind used to talk to himself or lost in some dark place which no one could see. In the ring, Mankind fought like he actually enjoyed pain, both giving and taking it. His mandible claw move was brutal, and watching him do things like fall off steel cages made the crowd nervous every time. And who can forget his iconic Socko move, where he would just basically shove a sock down his opponent's throat. This unsettling gimmick lasted 6 full years before he was turned into good old Mick Foley. 14. The Fiend. Bray Wyatt was already known for being creepy, but when he came back as the Fiend in 2019, things got seriously dark. It felt like all the pain and madness he'd bottled up over the years finally took over. He wore this horrifying mask that had a giant bloody smile and eyes that made the fans' skin crawl. The Fiend's entrance was equally uncomfortable. The lights would cut out and he would appear in the ring out of literally nowhere. The Fiend barely spoke, but whenever he did, he said some really unsettling things. The mandible claw became his signature move, and he would use it to obliterate his opponents. During a 2019 Hell in a Cell match, Seth Rollins kept attacking him with chairs, ladders, and even a sledgehammer, but the Fiend kept getting back up like he was invincible. Whether it is Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, or Husky Harris, he will always remain a legend.